Welcome, welcome! It's time for a little more book learning, and today we're going to talk about Poor Charlie's Almanack. This is by Charlie Munger, who's the billionaire partner of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway, and some people argue one of the smartest men alive. So let's listen to what he has to say. This is a pretty unique book. I'd say it's a combination between a textbook, graphic novel, and self-improvement. It's also relatively expensive just because it's so big, and I think Charlie was donating all of the proceeds of it to a foundation that he's created. So Amazon has it around $60, and it's a really big book, and it's a really great book. So I'll be completely honest, I've had this book for years, and I still haven't read everything in it. There's that much good stuff. So today, we're going to go over a section near the end of the book that's about 50 pages long, and Charlie refers to as the 25 psychology-based tendencies. Other people have referred to these as cognitive biases, and basically they're just instances where our brain is strongly influenced for one reason or another. We can't stop the influences, but by being aware of them, we can limit the damage they have on our lives, and if we learn them really well, we can use them to our advantage in arenas like marketing our products, for instance. Because there are 25 of these, I'll just go over each one and give my 2 cents very briefly. And there's a lot you can go into. You can dig really deep into these, especially when you get into kind of the marketing arena. But down the line, we can always take a look at more stuff in this book. We can talk about. There's tons of stuff to go over, but let's limit this to a few nuggets that you can all take away and implement today. Okay, first, let us start with a quote. And in case you didn't get the reference in in the title, he's a huge fan of Benjamin Franklin. That's why he calls it Poor Charlie, instead of Poor Ben or whatever. He's a huge fan of Ben Franklin and self-improvement, as am I. And this quote totally reflects that. I constantly see people rise in life who are not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up, and boy does that help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you. This is a great way to keep your eye on the prize when you're working away in your daily routine. We can't expect everything to happen overnight, but if we keep bettering ourselves, we can be confident that life will improve steadily. At least that's my story. That's what I believe. I'm sticking to it. So let's jump in to the golden nuggets for today, which are going to be just these 25 cognitive biases. They're all listed here, and we're going to spend basically the entire talk on this page just talking about these. Let's just go over them one at a time, and just remember that these are all tendencies that your brain has developed through evolution for one reason or another. So try to put them in context of how you interact with another person, an advertisement, a book you're reading, whatever. Don't try to beat them because they're part of you. Instead, consider how you can make yourself more aware of the tendencies you have, and by doing so, take greater control over your life. At the end, I'm going to give an awesome example of a situation where there are so many of these in play that it's almost impossible to make rational decisions. All right, let's start with number 1. Sound good? Okay, reward and punishment. So Charlie puts this first and says that you can't overestimate its influence. He says every year he thinks he has a grip on it, and then something happens that shows it's even more influential than he thought. Fortunately, it's easy to wrap your head around this one. People respond to incentives. I love thinking about this as it applies to the workplace jobs, right? If I'm an hourly employee, I'm incentivized to work for hours. If I'm a salaried employee, I'm incentivized to work as little as possible. If I work on commission, I'm incentivized to drive sales. Obviously, it's never quite this simple, right? You don't want to get fired. You take pride in your work, probably, I hope. But this is the tendency. Ben Franklin says, if you would persuade, appeal to interest and not to reason. Number 2, liking loving. This one's pretty easy. It says that we will like and love whatever likes and loves us. So how do you react differently to a dog that comes up to you wagging its tail versus one baring its teeth? Pretty simple. Number 3, disliking, hating. This is just the opposite of number 2. In fact, I kind of think of these as combined. Doubt-avoidance, number 4. This could be described as the certainty bias, and it just means that we're programmed to make decisions. For this one, I think of the whole fight or flight response, right? Throughout our evolution, when we were threatened, we had to choose one or the other, and it didn't do us any good to sit down and ponder all of our options. We had to make a snap decision. Number 5, inconsistency-avoidance. It's a lot easier to keep doing what we've been doing than to challenge our actions. And this is why I think it's so important to do just that. Otherwise, we develop a bunch of bad habits that never go away. This is why what we learned in Breaking Bad Habits, about breaking bad habits and creating good ones in Awaken the Giant Within, is so important. Number 6, curiosity. Humans are naturally curious. We're learning machines, just like Munger said, and anything that makes us wonder what's behind the curtain will grab our attention. Kantian Fairness. This one's, I didn't even know what that word was the first time I read it. So just think of this as the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Most people have enough empathy to follow this for the most part, but we also understand that fairness is needed to a degree for any society to function. I think this will become more and more important as the population on the planet grows. As these cities just get more and more crowded, we all have to kind of follow certain rules to get along. Number 8, envy/jealousy. It's really easy to want what other people have because it represents survival in most cases. Having food, shelter, or just stuff is something we all want. This one makes it really important to understand our own definition of success so we don't get caught chasing crap that won't really make us happy, right? So just because, your neighbor has whatever, you name it, it doesn't mean you need it. Make sure you keep your eye on what's important to you, and that's what you go after. Number 9, reciprocation. Super easy. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Number 10, influence from mere association. Another just super simple one, right? You've probably said this before. Any friend of Joe's is a friend of mine, right? Just association. I like this person, so I'll give this other person the benefit of the doubt. Number 11, simple pain-avoiding psychological denial. Denial is so dangerous. All we can do is look in the mirror and try to be honest with ourselves. Like I was just talking about what we want, about how we can actually get it, about, are our actions in line with what we want, or are we just kidding ourselves? Number 12, excessive self-regard. This is just narcissism. When good things happen to us, we give ourselves credit, and when bad things happen, we blame outside forces. We just need to be more aware to avoid this. Over-optimism. The sun will come out tomorrow, right? This is, a lot of people would argue this is a strength of humans, is that, we always hold on to hope, and it kind of drives us forward, but there is a danger in over-optimism, and sometimes we need to be a little pessimistic going into a situation. Boy Scouts, always be prepared, that kind of thing. 14, Deprival-superreaction. This one is really interesting, and it's kind of hard to grasp, but it basically says that if we gain something that gives us pleasure, we will feel even more pain by losing it. So an example that I would use is I love the GPS on my phone, but if it were taken away from me for good, I don't know what I would do with myself. Even though once upon a time I didn't have it, need it, or appreciate it, it's like once we get something, we value it way more than we could have previously. 15, social proof. Really easy. Monkey see, monkey do, right? 16, contrast misreaction. Great example of this is when you see a price that's crossed out and then a lower price is offered. Whatever the actual price is, it looks better, right? Even though they knew what they were going to sell it to begin with, and then they just created a bigger number and put an X through it. I think this one is paramount to think about in other areas of our lives, though. For example, if I make $30K a year, it's hard to even imagine making $1 million a year because there's such a gap there, right? But when we can do two things with this. Number one, we can appreciate making an increase to, say, $35K a year because it's a nice bump, right? Compared to what we had. But number two, we can put ourselves around people and learn how they make $1 million a year so we can adjust our understanding of what's possible. This, in my opinion, applies to everything in life, not just money. Surround yourself with people, read books like this, do whatever you need to do to recognize what's possible out there, and then find a way to do what you want. 17, stress influence. This says that hormones like cortisol and adrenaline will affect how we behave. And if you've ever, been in a dangerous situation and you've gotten a rush of adrenaline, it's not that hard to understand. 18, availability misweighting. I guess he calls it misweighing. A great example of this is if you've ever played apples to apples or maybe Cards Against Humanity, people are more likely to pick the last card they read just because it's fresh in their mind. 19, use it or lose it. As it applies to skills, we need to use them as often as possible or we will forget or deteriorate. Just remember, practice makes perfect, or better, however you want to say it. 20, drug misinfluence. This does not need much explanation. Alcohol's lowering of inhibitions is a great example. 21, senescence misinfluence. We can't live forever, and senescence, this is senility, right? Being senile. This is just basically saying that age does affect us, and as we get old, our brain will be affected. 22, authority misinfluence. We pay more attention to someone who's in charge or clearly an expert. This is one reason why I think writing a book is so valuable for a knowledge business. It shows everyone that you are the expert. 23, twaddle. That's a pretty funny word. So I remember tests in elementary school where we had to give essay answers or a paragraph, whatever. When I was completely clueless what the answer was, I would just write something as close to the subject as I could to show I at least knew something and hopefully get partial credit, right? Twaddle is just blabbing and talking too much in an effort to get attention or demonstrate ability. And I found it's usually the people who listen and are quiet that actually know what they're talking about when they choose to. This one is extremely important for me. I naturally, my personality is a little loud. I like talking. Maybe that's one of the reasons I like what I'm doing right now. But I've consciously made an effort to listen more and talk less. 24, reason respecting. Even though Ben Franklin said don't appeal to reason, it still has some value, just not as much as interest. We all like solving puzzles and understanding how things work, so you can appeal to reason. And number 25, this isn't really an individual one. Lollapalooza is just a fun word that Charlie uses to describe a situation in which multiple of these tendencies come together to be extremely influential. A great example of this is at an auction. So many of these are in effect, and when you combine them, it's almost impossible to make a rational decision. This is especially true at a live auction, but a lot of research has been done on eBay and other online auction sites to show that the outcome is still the same. People pay higher prices at auctions than they expect, and they also pay higher prices than they normally would. Let's look at some that are in effect. Reward is obvious. You want what the auctioneer has. The auctioneer himself is an authority figure, being up on a pedestal usually, right? That is like a literal authority just being blasted in your face. He's above you. You're surrounded by other people all bidding on the same stuff. So it must be a good idea, right? People go into an auction hoping to get a better deal. That's the over-optimism. There's extreme urgency as the auctioneer talks so fast it makes your head spin, right? I gotta blah 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 blah, whatever. That makes you feel, like you're gonna lose it. Use it or lose it. Bid or miss out. Every bid is a small increase to the one before, relatively speaking, right? So your contrast is all messed up. It's also extremely available right in your face, whatever is being, auctioned off. There's stress in the auctioneer's voice, in the people around you, and in your desire to be the winner. So stress everywhere. And, if you thought about this for a while and you went over all these, you could probably think of how, tons more apply. We'll stop there, though, and move on to the summary. Just, this is just a fantastic example of how, we can fall victim if we're not careful. But also, if we want to, use these in a good way, in a constructive way, to get people's attention and have them, have our message reach them, we can leverage the power of these. Okay, here's the summary. But, I'm pretty sure at some point I'll revisit this book. You all will have to tell me what you thought of it, but I have a feeling you'll want to learn more because this book is fantastic. I hope you all are working your way through different books, articles, and other ways to improve your skills and overall awareness and knowledge. That's one of the reasons I'm creating these, is because by talking about it, it's really helping things sink in. But today's summary is just that there are countless stimuli flying at us from all directions these days. So we have to be aware of our tendencies to be influenced by them and keep our focus on what we want. Exercise time. Comment below for each of these. Just like I just said, I'm doing this partly to help myself learn. That's the exact same reason you should want to, write about this, read what other people are saying about it, and drill it home. Number 1, what's a situation where you or someone else responded perfectly to incentive? Right? That's the number 1 cognitive bias, the one that Charlie says is just ridiculously powerful. Number 2, which of the other tendencies are you frequently affected by? And number 3, can you think of another situation other than the auction that we talked about where Lollapalooza happens? All right, answer those. Thanks, everyone, and I hope to see you in the next one.